Thank you for listening to We Have Ways of Making You Talk. Sign up to our Patreon to receive bonus content, live streams, and our weekly newsletter with money off books and museum visits as well, plus early access to all live show tickets. That's patreon.com/wehaveways.
Achtung, welcome to We Have Ways of Making You Talk in Normandy with me, James Holland, and I'm joined by, well, two great friends of the show, but I have to say, Woody, Paul Woodage. There's a few people who know the Normandy battlefield better than him. In fact, actually, I'm going to put my neck on the line here and just say there's no one who knows the Normandy battlefield better than him. Absolute living legend. World War II TV. He's just done over 1,000 live shows now on that. And if you people haven't already seen this, you need to clock into it pretty quickly because it's A1. But anyway, Woody and I go back a bit of a way, and we're still waiting for Al. So you are now my compadre for the day. But also, we're joined from another friend across the herring pond, Mr. Chas Mina, who has come over to Normandy. Willkommen. Welcome to join us. And we have stepped away from the melee around the coast. Yeah, around the coast. We've moved away. We haven't seen a Jeep for at least 10 miles. and we're in a very sort of it's off the beaten track here, but what we're looking at is Operation BLUECOAT, and because it's me, we're looking at the Sherwood Rangers Yeomanry, because this is the terrain that I wasn't able to look at when I was writing Brothers in Arms in lockdown, but I've been back to since, and this is just a fantastic little story here. We're in the tiny little village of Briquessart, which is just to the east of Comont, which the 1st Infantry Division, the US 1st Infantry Division, the big red one, managed to get to on something like the 12th of June. I mean, they got here incredibly quickly. It's a real high point. You can look all the way back to the coast from here, and it's about 20 miles inland, something like that. Connected to Caen by one of those sort of dead straight Roman roads. And this was the launch point for Operation BLUECOAT, which followed Operation Cobra, which was in turn followed Operation Goodwood, which was the British attack to the east of Caen, the infamous going 7 miles up to the Bougival Ridge, then followed by Cobra, which was the US First Army, and this was the big breakout. This is the moment that the German front really starts to collapse. And then hot on the heels of Operation Cobra is Operation BLUECOAT, which is a British operation, and it's one that's often kind of, well, not forgotten about exactly. Well, no, let's say it's forgotten about,
it is
really.
Forgotten, yeah.
Yeah, and it's certainly not on the tourist trail, is it? But it was an incredibly successful operation. 2 corps, 8 corps to the west of Comont, attacking southwards, and 30 corps to the east of Comont, so on the left-hand side of the attack, also heading southwards. And a very, very successful operation. But it sort of goes, like so often is the case with these two-pronged attacks, one prong does a little bit better than the other, and 8 corps got off to an absolute flyer. And the right-hand flank of 30 Corps didn't do too badly, but the left flank, which was the 7th Armoured Division, the Desert Rats, got a bit stuck around sort of Aulnay-sur-Odon and ended up with Bucknell, the Corps commander, being sacked, and also Major General Erskine, of the commander of the 7th Armoured Division, also got sacked as a result of just being too slow by General Dempsey, commander of 2nd Army. But our interest here is the efforts of 43rd Wessex Division, and of course, because it's me, the Sherwood Rangers Yeomanry. And the reason we're in Briquessart is because this is where a squadron of the Sherwood Rangers launched off for BLUECOAT. They were flying the flag for the Sherwood Rangers at the start of BLUECOAT on the 30th of July. Lovely sunny day, late summer day. And it was a squadron under the command of Major John Semkin were attacking through here, and they were attacking through some woods just to the north of where we are now. We can actually see the woods behind the village of Briquessart, and they were supporting the 5th Dorsets. And the chap who was leading the leading troop was David Render, who was a 19-year-old lieutenant and troop commander in A Squadron of the Sherwood Rangers. And he had to liaise with Major Brian Flavel of C Company of the 5th Dorsets, who were in the lead. And one of the problems that the Sherwood Rangers consistently had was they were always outranked, because they're part of 8th Armoured Brigade supporting an infantry division. So you've got a divisional commander, a major general, as opposed to a brigadier in charge of a brigade. They're always one rank down. Or in the case of David Render, he's a lieutenant, and Brian Flavel is a major commanding the C Squadron. And Flavel tries to sort of tell David Render what to do. And David Render takes very dim view of this and basically refuses to do what Flavel suggests because they know it's a kind of suicidal mission. And and this is a sort of classic thing that happens time and time again when new infantry are first married up with new armour. They haven't got that kind of working relationship and they just have to kind of sort of work it out themselves. But that whole kind of outranking thing is a problem. And so what happens is Render very quickly, his troop gets separated from the 5th Dorsets. They lose them in the wood. And he thinks, well, where the hell have they gone? And he's sort of looking around and they've just infantry have completely disappeared. And he emerges out of the wood and comes down this track, which we're just looking at. There's a kind of sort of village green with a road that bisects it. There's a sort of cavalry over on one half of the green, houses all around it. It's all very kind of verdant and rather twee. But anyway, there's a track just opposite us here, Woody, you can see. And Render comes down with his troop and they emerge either side of this building here. One tank over there, and Render's tank comes up to it, which is called AIM, comes up here, and no sooner does he pause here, then suddenly whoosh, something comes straight over his head. And he thinks, well, what the hell was that? And then there's another crash and it thumps into the ground here. And he looks over and sees this farmhouse over on the other side and thinks, what the heck? Traverses the gun, boom, boom, 2 rounds into it. Germans go flying. That's the end of that problem. And that, of course, is why that house is new and all the rest are nice and old. I mean, you must be a practiced hand at spotting the war damage in the village.
You look at the towns and you go, yeah, old, new. And then you there's always a story behind it. And these beginning of BLUECOAT to me is always that. There's confidence, isn't there now?
Yes.
But there's still hesitancy at the same time. It's like, can this really be true that we have got the Germans on the ropes? Cobra has been more successful than they could have really imagined, and it kind of becomes something else. It becomes the push on to Brittany, and then across the American and British fronts, it's like, have we really broken them? And I love that, those early stages of kind of restrained aggression, cautious. It's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, really is. And the infantry you got here, this is a German infantry division. They're not kind of top draw by any stretch of the imagination. The Germans have now sent all the panzer divisions they're going to send. The only one I think is still to come into action is the 116th, maybe 160 Panzer might not have got here at this stage. But what you're getting now is supplementary infantry divisions, again, who are kind of low grade, lots of hospitalians, lots of sort of, soldiers in German uniforms rather than German troops, etc., etc. And there's still guard dogs in this village, as you can hear. And so they're not top draw, but what they then go and investigate the house that they've just destroyed. A whole load of Germans come out and hand a hock and surrender. And what they manage to recover is a Panzerschreck. And it's the first one that's been captured. And a Panzerschreck it's basically a copy of a bazooka. It's a handheld, what do you call it, anti-tank weapon, I suppose.
Yeah, with a little shield, foot square shield.
But unlike the Panzer Faust, it's reusable.
Yeah,
and that's its kind of USP. But they capture there, and then they proceed on down, and they discover there's lots of sort of very, very loosely laid mines in the road leading out of the village. So Render just literally picks them up and tosses them into the hedge, and on they go. And this is the start of Operation BLUECOAT, and certainly from the 43rd Wessex point of view, it's a cakewalk.
Yeah, and after, let's be honest, the 43rd Wessex have had mixed experiences over the previous weeks.
Yes,
probably
in
more downs than ups. And I one of the things I love to talk about is the difference they're getting from the Germans they're interrogating. The Ritchie boys, the American unit who would, the German and Austrian-born Americans who would be going in there, and they're getting some really good. Prior to Cobra, they're still catching Germans going, yes, we will still throw you back. There's still confidence, but after Cobra, you can, the Ritchie boys said, you can just sense now the Germans are capturing. Well, we're buggered. There's too much coming our way now. We had no idea that the Allies even had that much stuff, and the bombardment at the beginning of Cobra and the artillery that is going to be coming to bear, and it's only going to get more. We haven't even got to totalize and tractable yet, where the number of tubes goes up and up and up, isn't it? And you can see that the Germans are realizing that finally their number is up. They just, anything they're doing now is kind of a last ditch. We're not going to really hold now. They're looking behind them for an exit route, but it doesn't make it any more any easier for the guys pushing through here. For the 43rd Wessex and the Sherwood Rangers, there's still, as you say, Germans there firing at them, but they break a bit more suddenly now, don't they? They don't have that determination that they would have had a few weeks earlier in that attritional phase.
They don't have the determination, but they don't have the these are not SS troops, they're not panzer divisions, they're not the creme de la creme. Some of the infantry that are being hustled over to Normandy in quick order are okay, but there isn't the leadership, there isn't the reason for kind of there isn't the motivation, I suppose is the right word, that there is in some of the panzer divisions, and it's just an easier fight here. But you still got to make the ground, and you've still got to kind of push forth. And of course, this being the Germans, and this being Normandy, and this being kind of Hitler's orders, and this being kind of 10 days after the July plot and all the rest of it, they're not gonna. It's not going to be a complete cakewalk. And what's going to happen is they're going to send in the remnants of panzer divisions, and so as they push south, they can expect heavier opposition and more armour, and these new Jagdpanthers which are coming in, a Panther chassis assault gun with a 88mm fixed gun on the top of it. So they're going to come up against those, and it's not going to be easy at all. And it's also not going to be easy because the terrain around here, known as the Swiss Normand, is pretty challenging. It's ridge after ridge, it's lots of hills, it's lots of winding lanes, and all the features that we've come to know and love in Normandy, and that makes it very difficult.
It's got that Italy look in the sense that you've got individual companies and battalions who can't see what's happening to their left and right, whereas earlier on, back kind of towards the end of June, you've got a comfort of knowing, that battalion's over there to my left, and you kind of know where your core artillery is, where the intelligence, depots and everything is. And now, as we can see here, you're going down these individual lanes where you don't know what's to your left and right.
No,
and we can now look at a map and go, well, look, they're kind of all advancing at roughly the same kind of pace, but they didn't know that then. No. You're literally venturing into the unknown.
Yeah.
And that's what this country, when it opens up and kind of starts rolling like this, you realise it's very pretty, but that then therefore makes it difficult. I always tell my people, don't come through here looking at it from the point of view, look at those pretty chateaus, look at that lovely, look at it from the point of view of someone taking a tank down that road or leading an infantry squad across that field, because it's the fear of the unknown.
Well, absolutely. Well, what we're going to do now, we're going to push on down. We're going to go through Kahany, which was taken by the Sherwood Rangers and the Dorsets on the 1st of August. And then we're going to push on. We're just going to drive straight through there. And then we're going to push on to Jurques and Labigne, where there was a major engagement. So back in the car and following the trail of the Sherwood Rangers. But I love coming to these little out-of-the-way places, coming off the beaten track, and trying to work out and imagine it and picture the kind of Sherman tank. I think you can picture a Sherman tank coming out of that lane really easily and pushing over there, and the fight that happened in this little corner. But a lot of these villages have little stories to tell, I think. Oh, and Woody, having just sort of waxed lyrical about all the work you do and your knowledge and stuff, you actually live over here, don't you?
23 years now, yeah.
Amazing.
Amazing, and it's but yet people like yourself can still take me to places I haven't been to, because it's 2,000 square miles, and every day I do one of my little recce trips that always have a cake stop in the afternoon, I'll be finding new stuff, because you go, well, where are we now? Or if I go down that road, where's that going to take me? And you find a monument, you find something, you go, hang on, that means we must be on the flank of that bit there, and you suddenly realise you've explored a new battlefield. It's a passion, and it's just never stops being interesting.
So we just pulled over and we've gone through Kahany, which was captured by the British 41st Wessex Division and the Sherwood Rangers on the 1st of August. Then on the 2nd of August, overnight from the 1st into the morning of the 2nd, they're going through Jurques. Meanwhile, a squadron has been sent off of the Sherwood Rangers, has been sent up there, Woody. And you were very excited about Jurques because for you it is a...
it's a zoo.
It's a zoo.
You're going to see tigers and panthers, James.
Exactly. But for me, this is a key spot on the Sherwood Rangers trail. And that hill there is taken by a squadron of the Sherwood Rangers, and George Dring gets another couple of tigers, and it's another big victory for the for a squadron, following their kind of slaughter that they have on the Roré Ridge on the 26th of June. And they're full of high morale and thinking that they've got the Germans on the run. And they're clearing that whole ridgeline up there. And the main reason they managed to kind of best the Germans is because this is the Panzer divisions are starting to move in. I think it's remnants of the 9th and 10th,
right.
But also the 21st Panzer, remember them from D-Day, etc. And they've got onto that ridge before the Panzers have arrived. So they've just beaten them to it. They've got the high ground, so they hold all the aces. The same is not the case here. So while A Squadron are over there doing that work with their part of their infantry battalion from the 43rd Wessex, C and B Squadron are moving through Zerk, which has just been very badly bombed and is, aflame. And they come up here in the morning, they move down here, and right in front of us here, Woody, you've got that's the Odon Valley.
Yeah.
It's only a trickle there, but they've got to get down here. And can you see on the distance that tree line? It's a sort of continuation of that ridge which has got hill 361, point 361, which A Squadron are on. And I guess, what's that? It's like sort of 3 or 4 miles further on to the east. But that ridge line up there on the other side of that, that's on de Fontaine. And the other side of that, of course, is Montpinçon.
Yeah.
The highest point in Normandy. And this is where the Sherwood Rangers got. And they're here with, the infantry battalions that they're attached to, 5th Dorsets and so on, that they're attached to. And moving up this, so they've got to go down. But I mean, look at these roads. They're a nightmare, aren't they? High banks, winding, you can't see round the corners, you don't know what's lurking behind, and someone has to be on point.
You go first.
Yeah, right. And you just know that somewhere along the line, something's going to be heading your way.
And are they confident now? Have they got a little bit of pressure off from the sort of Fontenay era? Is there a bit more, belief now in teamwork and how things work, or is it still that early caution in the back?
No, I think they've got that, but they're still only kind of sort of 3 days in of operating with the 43rd Wessex Division. So it's that whole kind of, you've got to kind of get the cut of their jib, and you've got to kind of work out what their the infantry's expectations are, and so on and so forth. And it's just, always comes with operational challenges as well as the potential threat of the enemy. So they're kind of long enough in the tooth now that they know not to be complacent and think that victories are going to be easy, because just around the corner might be some mines, might be a sniper, might be someone lurking with a Panzerfaust, an anti-tank gun, etc., a waiting kind of assault gun or whatever it might be behind a hedge. So, danger lurks at every turn, and your enemy doesn't have to be the highest trained or the highest motivated to still be lethally dangerous.
Especially when you've got the Odon there. And that's maybe for me the difference between Cobra and Bluecoat is Cobra's maybe about taking those crossroads towns and Coutances and Avranches, yes, and moving out that way, whereas here, yes, you can take different roads between the villages, but at some point you've got to cross over a little stone bridge over the Odon. So the Germans would know where the bridges are. They've got the observation. I mean, this ridge we can see, great view for us, but it's also a great view for the defender watching what's coming in, isn't it? And they know that at some point they're going to have to head into that valley. And Bluecoat becomes a bit of a battle of little bridges, isn't it? As well as clearing the ground, it's that and choke points. The fear of what if it's not there? What if we have to fight for it? What if you've got a column all stuck up behind it and you get delayed? Because Bluecoat, there's a certain amount of pressure on to get this done, isn't it? Because Cobra has set a standard. The Bluecoat has, although it's not doing the same thing, it's still got to reach that same potential because as I said earlier, Cobra was just such a phenomenal success, wasn't it, really?
Yeah.
It started very slowly, but then it got going. This steamroller got going, and Bluecoat is the left hook that follows up the right hook, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And actually, that pressure for speed and the kind of sort of getting on with it, we'll see that really start to come into play when we push on and go and have a look at the Nuoro, which you've already been to, but I haven't been with you, and I'm very, very anxious to look at where Stan Perry and all the guys in C Squadron of the Sherwood Rangers crossed over there and try and find the crossing point and then go up onto that ridgeline around Berjou. But there, the pressure of speed and time and getting on with it really, really starts to bite in a very, very bad way, I would argue. But it's already coming into play here. So, you've got the Germans on the run, they're beaten, come on, let's just get on with it. But getting on with it in this terrain poses all sorts of potential problems. And just look at it. I mean, it's an absolutely beautiful scene to us today on this early June day in 2024. But back in beginning of August 1944, nearly 80 years ago, this place just posed so many hazards if you're trying to advance.
And we have to remind ourselves that we mustn't add our knowledge of what's going to happen in the next couple of weeks, because we do know there's going to be a German counterattack towards Avranches and Lüttich, and then the Falaise Gap is going to... But they don't know that. So, we have to remove that understanding of there is going to be a big significant change in a few days' time. But at the moment, it's just another ridge, just another bridge, just another valley, just another hill, and it's the same job you've been doing for weeks, essentially.
Yep. Well, we're going to push on down. We're going to push on down across the Odon and push on up to the little hamlet of La Bigne. See you after the break. So we just got out of the car again, and we've come up the hill. We've crossed over the River Odon, the tiny little trickle of the Odon at this stage. And it's around here, Woody, that they first get hit. So C Squadron of the Sherwood Rangers are leading, supporting the 7th Hampshires, who are mainly in carriers. You know, they're all mobile. So this is just like a great big column of armoured cars, of Sherman tanks, of carriers, engineers with them. You know, sappers not very far behind. But the lead vehicle is a Sherman tank. And it's Lieutenant Alan Burkitt's tank. And it's somewhere around here. They get hit. He gets hit by an SP. He gets hit by a Stug. I think it's just a little bit further back, coming from that ridge over there is my reading of it, but I'm not quite sure. But what happens, that gets hit, incinerated. Everyone goes, okay, start deploying. Then a second tank gets hit, and that is Alan Burkitt's. So Donald Campbell's tank gets hit first. That's all killed, all 5 just killed. It completely brews up. It's just one of those shockers. And it's one of those things about tanks, as they don't always brew up. But this is the start of the day. You've got lots of fuel on. You've got lots of ammunition on. So you're much more vulnerable. This is morning still. Beginning, the first engagement of the day. So that's why you're more likely to brew up. It's not at the end of the day where you've kind of lost all your ammunition. You haven't got much fuel on board. Then Alan Burkitt's tank is hit immediately afterwards, and he tries to bail out, and as he gets bailed out, he gets sniped and hit in the stomach, and he falls back into the tank, and none of the others can get out because he's blocking, and suddenly the tank starts rolling back down the hill, and it's going to go straight into the carriers and trucks and other tanks behind, and Guy Sanders, who is just behind, Guy Sanders MM, who's won an MM in North Africa, one of the legends of the regiment, and, pre-war TA guy, he's been with the regiment for absolutely ages. He jumps out of his tank, jumps onto the retreating tank that's fallen, Burkitt's tank, which is rolling back down the hill, leans down into the driver's compartment and steers it off the road. So it goes into the side, and averts what would have been, absolute carnage. So it's an incredibly heroic moment. And they have a really, really tough fight here. They have to. This is one of those things where you've got a big, long armoured column. You're trying to push forward. You don't know quite when you're going to come up against the enemy. Chances are you're going to hit them at some point. They do here at La Bigne, and it then becomes quite a big ding dong for the next kind of day and a half. A Squadron come up and support, and they've got to kind of push on, and they've got to kind of clear the ridge line. Then they've got to push on again, and then there's lots of mines in the road and blah, blah, blah. And, you can see how these operations time just gets eaten up, gets sucked up.
And it's the risk and reward thing, isn't it? It's like, do you move fast and hope there's nothing, or do you stop every now and then and send a little scouting party up and check and then go back? But then the time is ticking all that time, isn't it? So this is the time of the campaign when on one day you have this massive advance and nothing happens, and the next day you get this, and you don't know until you push up that road, because to the uninitiated, every village looks exactly the same. And is that the one with the Germans in it, or is it the one without the Germans in it? And it's a struggle period, isn't it? Because you want to be moving, you want to be proactive, but there's always danger around the corner.
Yeah, and this is an incredibly anonymous little kind of hamlet stroke village somewhere kind of 8 miles south of Comore, but you can see the hazards, can't you? Yeah,
it's the potential ambush. Yeah, slope, nowhere to go. The earth banks we've been driving through the last half an hour. It's your funnel. It's canalised, isn't it? Yep. There's nowhere to go. You can't flank round, and if you did, the Germans would see you anyway. If you try and use the fields, they'll just watch you, and lose your speed. The road is your artery. But I wouldn't want to be taking a tank up here. I want to be near the back of the column safely, I think, if I was here.
Well, yeah, and the problem is they have got a huge amount of pressure because everyone's saying, we've got to get on with it, we've got to get on with it. The breakthrough's happening, you've got to keep pushing, you've got to keep pushing. So that's filtering down from 30 Core from Bucknell. It's filtering down to Bucknell from Dempsey. He's going, get on with it, get on with it, get on with it. It's filtering down to Monty from London and Washington and everyone else because London's now under attack by V1s, and that's starting to really dictate the pace. And the Americans done their breakthrough, so we need to do the breakthrough too. So you've got to push on, got to push on. That then filters down to Ivo Thomas, who is the Major General in command of the 43rd Wessex Division, and it's hard to find a more humorless person than him. He's known as the Butcher. He's known as Von Tommer by the Sherwood Rangers after the captured Africa Corps commander at Alamein. And he's a ruthless son of a dog. I mean, he really pushes his men incredibly hard and doesn't want to take the hits, but is prepared to take the hits. And they're taking the hits. And, that's just the truth of the matter. And the other thing about this is you're constantly being canalised. This is the only road to Onderfontein. Yeah. You can go cross-country a bit, but not really. And these columns, because of speed, because of all sorts of other factors, you're going to go along the road, as you say, until you come up against trouble. And it's trouble that they come up against here.
Yeah, well, it's that whole the fueling thing, isn't it? Even just the amount of extra fuel you burn going over fields compared to the road, the efficiency and all that, and that means you've got to stop to then refuel, and that's was it 90 jerry cans per Sherman tank or something crazy, and that's all time, and there's the pressure is on there. There's the Cobra BLUECOAT break. I mean, is it a breakout yet? Is it? We would label it a breakout, but does it feel like a breakout if you're in it? When does the breakout come to a determined end? At what point do you say, okay, can we stop here and regather our thoughts? And
well, and I think there's also this feeling, which is increasingly the case, which is that the Germans are beat here. We've got them on the run, and yet they're still fighting. And how much do you want to put your neck out and all the rest of it? And what always amazes me is just how much people will continue to be prepared to fight. They might be cautious, they might be a little bit kind of wary about what's around the corner, and yet whether you're the Sherwood Rangers, whether you're the 7th Hampshires or the 4th Dorsets who are accompanying a C and B squadron of the Sherwood Rangers along this road, they're still doing it. They are still going forward. They're still pushing forward. They're facing those dangers. From a German perspective, they're also still fighting as well, even though they're beaten. It's like what you were saying when we were at Brickasard. I mean, you can obviously be appalled at the total waste of German lives of the commanders, but the men involved, I mean, they don't want to be here any more than the guys in the 7th Hampshires or 4th Dorsets or Sherwood Rangers want to be here. And yet they're still fighting too. I mean, it's an absolute tragedy, isn't it, that this is still going on in these beautiful little corners of the Swiss Normand. But
the Germans have got nothing left to lose now, have they? They're screwed. There's nothing they can do now. There's no, I mean, yes, eventually they're falling back to the Seine now, but they might as well just carry out those orders from Adolf and hold every village and hold every ridge, because what's the other option? Cobra had that maybe advantage there not being that many Germans ahead of them, and a lovely road network down through Coutances through to Avranches, and it's only a few miles over to our west really, but this is a very different terrain here, and the BLUECOAT Cobra difference I think is particularly there visible when you're in it.
Yes. Yeah. I also the other thing I always get about this when you're walking the ground is you get the sense of scale. You see how it all kind of fits together. We're looking back to the north now. There's a ridge. We're looking to the south. There's another ridge, point 361, and eventually just over. We can't see it behind the houses in front of us, but there's the wooded ridge on which Onderfontein lies. It's you clear one ridge, you get up another one. You clear one ridge, you get up another one. And in between those ridges are little folds and rivers and hedges, and it's an absolute shocker. Anyway, what we're going to do now is we're going to get back in the car. We're going to push on. We're going to climb up towards the ridge on which Onderfontein lies. So, Woody, we've left Flabinia and we're on the road up to Onderfontein, and we've left the open farmland, and now we're travelling on a road that's climbing up a wood. And this wood was here in 1944, and this is the only road. There is no way. You've got to no alternative. You've got to take this road. And again, Sherwood Rangers in the lead. This time is A Squadron again, and our friend David Render, who we met in Brickasard, he of Panzerschreck fame, he is leading. He's the point man. And he is just absolutely bricking it and totally braced for the hit that's going to come. And what does happen is here, suddenly, wham, comes in, and it's an anti-tank round, and it's just short and hits the road before him, in front of him. So he pulls back a little bit, fires his gun at it, fires his gun, creates lots of noise, fires as hard as he can, gets onto the radio to John Semkin, who is his squadron commander. John Semkin gets onto the forward observation officer of the Essex Yeomanry, who are in sextons rather, mobile 25-pounders on a Sherman chassis. In a matter of minutes, the rounds are coming in, and this is the USP of the Allied way of war, this ability to bring a huge amount of firepower onto a target. But that's the only way they're going to get up here. And so they just pummel it. And what you're talking about here is you're talking about rear guards of Germans. It's not hugely defended. They're scrabbling to get to this position. They've been beaten back from Labinia. They're up on the ridge line. This is what's been firing at David is just one lone gun and a couple of other people with Panzerfaust and stuff. It's not a major force. And the Essex Yeomanry's 25-pounders do for it. But you don't know that if you're David Render. I mean, looking at this, it's.
I mean, this road is 20 feet wide, but it would have been narrower in the war because they would routinely, when they paved these roads, because it would have been kind of a dirt track almost.
That's right, yeah.
Pull the dirt in off the side of the bank on the right, pull it in on the left, and just widen it out to make it a more modern thoroughfare. So when we're looking at it, reduce it to about 6 foot, and if a Sherman tank gets knocked out on this, that's. It's what do? You can't push it out the way. Where do you? Thank God for the artillery. Thank God for the self-propelled guns. Because, this is weirdly. I'm thinking about the Germans in a week's time when they're doing Lüttich, and they're doing a similar thing, being held back by single tank destroyers and anti-tank guns, but they haven't got the ability to get on the blower and say we need support. So for them, it absolutely ruins them because a route gets blocked to them.
Right.
But the Allies can just call on that big war behind them and call up the artillery, this close air support and the mortars and keep on ploughing through. And that's the difference, that the individual tank crew at the front and the individual crew defending the anti-tank gun have got exactly the same job, but they've got a different arsenal behind them. And I think
but you are still the stick that's probing the hornet's nest in that lead tank. And no one wants to be the lead tank, but whenever it was David Render's troop, he always took that job. He felt that as a troop commander, it wasn't a case of doing it in turns. Yeah. That was his responsibility, and so he did it. And you would be all the time you're here, your heart's going to be hammering. You're going to be just waiting. My God, you're on edge. It's like those films where people are sort of wandering around people's houses in the dark, and you're just waiting for something to go boo. It's kind of like that here, isn't it? I mean, but obviously considerably more lethal.
Do you go fast? Do you go slow? Do you stop? Do you get out your head out? Do you walk in front of the tank? Do you go behind the tank? Do you send many
Woody,
decisions?
one of the I mean, the British are pretty far. They do move quite quickly in BLUECOAT, particularly 8 Corps, Dick O'Connor's 8 Corps. Really, really, absolutely. They do kind of 20 miles in a matter of days, which is fast going. And yet there is still this sort of reputation about the Allies being stodgy and everything and being slow and all the rest of it. But I think when you're on roads like this, you can understand why time gets sucked up, why it takes so long. Because, we're not the Russians. We're not going to just send our troops across minefields. We want to kind of preserve lives as much as we possibly can. You want to get on with it. There's a very fine balance between getting on with it and being overly cautious. There's also a very fine balance between being completely reckless and looking after the lives of your men. But you're trying to find that kind of sort of that perfect balance, that kind of middle ground. There is pressure to get on with it here in BLUECOAT and really speed up and get to Onderfontein, get to Montpinçon, etc., etc. But, the moment the enemy starts hitting you, you've got to stop. You've got to kind of deploy your firepower. You've got to, the engineers have to come out, clear the road, blah, blah, blah. And so it gets repeated. And that's how hours in the day just get sucked up. So it's not until they're hoping to get to Onderfontein on the 3rd, they're up on the ridge by the evening of the 3rd, but they just can't quite push into the town that night, so it's going to be the following morning that they go in. And that's where we're going to go to next. And then we'll stop there, and then we'll go down to the Noireau.
Cool.
We're now on the 3rd of August, 1944. Well, Woody, we've come up to the kind of the heart of Onderfontein. We're just looking down at the church. There's a I think it's the village. Oh no, it's a mairie, isn't it? That they're doing a little bit of the workmen are doing a little bit of work on the roof there. We're looking across. You can see sort of ridge line on the top. That is Montpinçon. Montpinçon is, of course, is not. It's not a kind of Mont Blanc or something. Some big kind of pointy mountain. It's a ridgeline really, and where we're looking at now is exactly the route in which they go up.
Yeah.
The 4th, 7th Dragoon Guards and 13th, 18th Hussars, isn't it? And with the 43rd Wessex Division. But this is on Fontaine, and this is what finally captured on the 4th of August. And this time it's C Squadron of the Sherwood Rangers with I think it's the 4th Dorsets. And this time Stuart Hills is in the lead. Another of these 19-year-old troop commanders who was there on D-Day, gets his... unfortunately, his DD Sherman gets sunk from beneath him, but they all managed to get out, fortunately. So he rejoins the regiment a few days after D-Day. But, by the beginning of August, he's an old hand. He's a proper veteran. He's been there, done it, got the T-shirt. And he is on point. Reaches that crossroads. We just came along the top of the ridgeline there. We got woods on our left-hand side, fields away to the right. We came down, dropped into the village. There's a crossroads, and they just poked their noses round the corner. And wham! Down comes an anti-tank round, which they hastily kind of pull back and reverse. And that's one of the virtues of the Sherman tank, is that you can, of course, manoeuvre it very quickly, a lot more easily than a Tiger or a Panther, it has to be said. They pull back, and he gets out, and Jack Holman, who is the new he was the second in command of C Squadron, now commander of C Squadron, Peter Soleri's just been wounded the day before in Lavinia. He comes up and says, well, I think it's time to get Arthur's boys on this one. And of course, he's talking about Arthur Warburton, who's the same forward observation officer that John Semkins got to work when David Render's on point going up through that ridgeline the previous evening. And Warburton's boys come in and they start pummeling the village. And the infantry officer comes up to Stuart Hills and says, I think there's an OP in yon steeple on the church. You wouldn't mind putting a round into that, old boy, would you? And Hill says, yeah, no, that's no problem at all. And so he says to Dick Dexter, who's his new gunner, would you mind doing that, please, Dick? And Dick fires the first one and it whistles past and misses completely. And the second one, it's... That's the end of the steeple. So what we're looking at now has been remade since then. And soon after, they were able to clear the village, and that's that. And again, it's kind of, you get the feeling that this is skeleton force defending this in terms of a German perspective.
Skeleton force, but they're in the right place though, aren't they?
Yeah. And it's a reminder again, isn't it, of just the hazards of going around any corner anywhere in Normandy at this point. You just don't know what's lurking.
And experience doesn't really make a difference. There's that luck element, isn't there? Is it going to be me? Is it going to be that corner or this corner? And you can practice all your speed on response on the radio and your teamwork, but there's that, just like jumping out of an aircraft. We witnessed the jump this morning, that moment of truth where you just go past that wall, around that corner, through that wood, and it might go off and it might not go off. It's crazy to think about.
Yeah, no. And by this point, the Sherwood Rangers are really starting to feel it, to be perfectly honest. They've taken a huge amount of hits already. And in fact, throughout the whole of the Normandy campaign, of the 36 officers that started with it, they have 44 casualties just in officers alone. And something like sort of 76 other ranks. It's a huge number. So that, that's more than 100% casualties amongst the officers. And obviously there's plenty of officers who haven't heard, haven't been hit or wounded at all. But it all starts to take its toll, and actually Dick Dexter can't get out of the tank after this. They move the Sherman into the village, and everyone else is getting out and kind of sort of going, phew, it's another, probably get some few days leave now, and it's another one we can cross off the list, and we've survived it, and you don't want to look too far ahead, but at least I'll probably be alive for the next 3 days. And he can't get out of the tank, and he's gone. He's absolutely shot. And the regimental padre plays a really, really key role, whether it be an infantry battalion or whether it be an armoured regiment. And in the case of Sherwood Rangers, it's Padre Skinner, Leslie Skinner. And he's a really, really good man. He's a properly good man. He refuses to let any of the men bury their own. He just feels, they're having to put up with enough themselves without having to get involved with prizing apart blackened corpses or badly maimed corpses or whatever. That's his job, not theirs. But he's really itching to get back and bury Campbell's crew and Burkitt's crew back at Lavinia. And it's not until the 4th of August, so 2 days after it's happened, that he can get anywhere near them because they've just been burning out and they're too hot. But eventually he gets in and all he finds in Burkitt's tank is just a little bit of pelvic bone. And it's not until the 7th that he can actually get inside Campbell's tank. And the 3 people in the turret, because you have a driver, co-driver stroke lap gunner, and then you have the 3 guys in the turret, they've all been they've all been kind of welded together in the Inferno. They've been sort of carbonized, and he has to prise them apart and try and get them out. And his diary is just full of him kind of vomiting all the time. And it's very hard to get your head around this, that just a few days earlier they're kind of sort of, bouncy, cheerful 21-year-old, and then you're looking at this sort of blackened hulk in the middle of the tank, and it's these units are very tight, they're very close, and it's the same with companies, infantry companies, and all the rest of it. And there's no answer to this of how you cope with these losses. There's no solution, and obviously some people, you'll know this from all the veterans that you've spoken to, Woody. Veterans sort of go, I didn't like to make any friends after I lost my best mate, because I didn't want to get close to me, because I knew that, that
classic.
So it's a great line, isn't it?
Yeah.
But you need that camaraderie as well. So you can't be too diffident and too standoffish, because, you need to have trust and all sorts of things. And on a personal bit, you need downtime. You need to have people that you can lark with and have a beer with, and when you're not on the front.
But there's almost an irony in the sense that finally now the Allies have got plenty of ammo, plenty of fuel, plenty of artillery, but the human tank is running empty, isn't it? You see that in the war diaries across August. There's, Leslie Skinner you can tell in his book, there's not much left now. He's got to step out and do it again, clear another tank, clear another hedgerow, and that's weirdly, as the tech gets more plentiful, the human endeavour and spirit behind it is just wearing down. And the August period, again, we know there's going to be a conclusion to this. We know in a couple of weeks' time, almost 3 weeks' time, we're in Paris, aren't we? But they have no idea of that. They are just another day, another loss, another friend, another new crew,
another pointless village that they got to clear. Yeah.
And you talk to the vets, and their D-Day memories are quite clear, because they spent ages by those sand tables, so they knew we're Courseulles, it's Bernier, whatever. Yeah. This day, they don't know which village they're in. It's just another one on another ridge. We were near that village of the the bridge and the ridge and the dead guys, and it's all just a blur.
Yeah.
And then that's August for me in a nutshell. That everybody's breaking point. It's like the Band of Brothers episode. Everybody's. How close is any unit to that breaking point?
Well, as it stands, the 43rd Wessex Division are urged to clear the rest of these ridges here, this ridge here. So the Sherwood Rangers are involved in that in the next couple of days. And obviously Montpinçon, which is attacked on the 5th and cleared, I think, by the 6th or the 7th of August. I can't remember. The same day as Lüttich is launched on the counterattack at Mortain. German counterattack at Mortain is launched on the 7th as well. And the same day that Totalize is launched. So there's a lot going on in this period, and the idea is to immediately launch Operation Blackwater, which is BLUECOAT is over by the kind of 6th, with the capture of Montpinçon. That's the end of BLUECOAT. But then is to do Operation Blackwater, and the Sherwood Rangers are going to have to be in that as well. And they're all kind of thinking, really? We're absolutely spent here. And then it gets postponed. And it's not until the 14th that they're on their way again. So they get pulled back to a few miles just north of Zurich, where they're in a rest camp for a few days, and a much needed rest camp at that. But then suddenly Blackwater's back on again, and that's what we're going to follow next. So we're going to head down to the Noireau and see where C Squadron were leading the march for the Sherwood Rangers on the 16th of August as they cross the Noireau. And we're going to be continuing this story of the Sherwood Rangers in their final major action in the Normandy campaign on the 16th of August 1944 in the next episode.